Casey.
So now, this is a lot of like formality for not much, but, so I need somebody to open the meeting, the public hearing, let's say.
I'll make a motion, we open the public hearing for the RDA.
Okay. Second. Okay, the meeting is now open for any public comments. If anyone wants to make a comment, are welcome to at this time. Okay, seeing that there's no comments, I'll accept a motion to close the public hearing and adopt the budget for the, excuse me, adopt resolution 22-03. Sorry, gotta do my mind in the game.
I move that we close the public hearing and adopt resolution 2203.
Thank you very much.
Second.
It's been moved in second, so all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Being that that's a number item, did I need to take roll call on that because that is financial?
Yeah, there should be a roll call vote.
Okay, I'm gonna change that, I caught myself on it. So, Dave, let's start with you.
Aye.
Thank you. Clint?
Aye.
Zach? Aye. Tina? And
Aye.
Tyson? Okay. Okay, so it's unanimous that we accept the budget, or the resolution 22-03. So now, I need to close that hearing and go into the next one, right? Or can I keep it open in this case, in this meeting?
That one was closed, so now just the next item.
That's true. All right, sorry you guys, I'll get in here soon. Okay, let's go on to item number 3. Let's adopt a budget for the fiscal year 22-23. So with that, Tracy's going to also explain the budget.
And so I have on the screen just a summary of the budget. If I can get my mouse to turn over. We have the revenue in the redevelopment agency, the economic development area, and the community development area. You can see the funding sources, tax increment and use of fund balance in the redevelopment area, tax increment in the economic development area, and tax increment in the community development area. Those are the revenue sources. And in the 3 different areas, the uses in the RDA for personnel and some operational costs, and mostly the biggest amount is for the payback agreements, which we discussed, the one to Young's, which continues into this budget year 2023 that's being presented. Then in the economic development area, payback agreement there to Keogh based on the terms there, and also some personnel and operational costs in that area. And then community development area is payback agreement based on the R.C. Willey agreement in that area. That is the extent of the RDA budget. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
So maybe for the benefit of Bettina and Tyson at least, just the reason you have EDAs and CDAs and RDAs and all that is the legislature has a very prolific habit of changing the names of these kinds of redevelopment areas. Used to all be called RDAs, and so they all essentially do the same thing, but based on when these went into effect, they were called EDAs, economic development areas, or CDAs, community development areas, or RDAs. So that's the reason. Several years ago, they would often fall under an RDA. You have an RDA area here and an RDA area here. And so I explained that somewhat earlier here, that it appears to be a little more confusing, or but that's essentially the reason they all essentially function the same way.
It's kind of like go in or go yo. What am I saying?
So since we closed the public hearing last time, there's not a public hearing this time, so staff would recommend the board adopt resolution 204, adopting the budget for the RDA for fiscal year 22-23.
Gary, can you remind me the least recent legislation restricting the ability of cities to kind of use enticements like this? Does this affect the RDA format?
It does after a certain date.
So it doesn't, this stuff's grandfathered, right? Because it's already functioning, but we couldn't do a new one?
That's correct. You couldn't use money for commercial incentives after, I think it's July
July 1st.
21st?
July 1st.
July 1st. Sorry.
So it would need to be used for what then?
What can the money be used for? It can be used for any type of redevelopment of a project. It can be used for, there's a percentage of it can be used for low to moderate income housing. And it can be used for infrastructure, still be used for infrastructure. And it can be used for mixed use type developments where you have a percentage of retail and a percentage of housing. And if you have that proper percentage, then you can use it for the retail purposes as well as the residential. You can mix the two, but you just can't have straight big. What they're trying to get rid of is just the incentives for big blocks, you know, for Walmarts and Sam's Clubs.
So it's a good thing Young's came in when they did.
Yeah, I think this is aware of them.
Okay, any other discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt resolution 22-04.
I'll make a motion we adopt resolution 2204.
There a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you.
Thinking about it.
Roll call vote again. So let's start with Tina.
Aye.
Zach.
Yes.
Clint.
Aye.
Dave. Tyson.
Aye.
Dave, are you on there? Do you want to chime in on this vote? Okay.
Hello?
Hello.
Okay.
So we're voting
Yeah.
on the last item of our
Aye.
REA
Aye.
meeting.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, that's unanimous then. So that actually concludes our items for our redevelopment agency meeting. So I'll entertain a motion to come out of our RDA meeting and go into our regular work meeting.
So moved.
Thank you. Moved in second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay, we'll give Kim a minute here, and then we will go on to our regular scheduled work meeting. But, well. Okay, you're good? Okay, let me welcome everyone out to our regularly scheduled work meeting for June 16th of 2022. We'll start out at our work meeting with any type of council reports that you want to share with one another.
We had the CTC board meeting earlier this week, and the one thing that I would like to mention to this group is that if you, I think we still are in need of somebody from the media sector to be on the CTC board. I'm not sure if it's the board or key leaders, but if there's anybody who you know that would be a good fit, this is for communities that care. And also, if you know of any citizens who want to be more active, we need help in the work groups. And these work groups will just help to put together the programs that we want to support, and also, you know, just other types of administrative things. But people who are active in the community, or maybe not active but want to be and have skills, if you know somebody, feel free to suggest them our way. These work groups, you don't have to, you know, have a particular title or whatever.
Somebody ought to reach out to 360 Marketing, since they're part of My Utah or My Love Utah.
Oh, yeah.
And they would probably be a good one to put on there.
Yeah, I can reach out to
And as far as other community members, I think that's kind of asking different people we know,
great.
kind of help fill those spots. Okay. Thank you for booking and for keeping that going and attending those meetings and going back to this. And it's kind of hard for us all to be there.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, there's lots of good stuff going on.
There
We'll
is.
have an announcement for the Davis County's doing an emergency preparedness event for the Latino community, but they're focusing on Kaysville and Layton. It's going to be in Kaysville, but it's on June 23rd, so I'll announce that. And there's a flyer And maybe I can send that to somebody, whoever is our media folks, and I don't know what we post on our website.
Send it to Steve, and then Steve can make sure it gets out there. Yeah.
So, yeah, there's that. And I think, yeah, that's a work request.
Okay. Seth, do you have anything?
Yeah, the Utopia just formally adopted their most recent budget. Just some highlights, all the original cities, so that would be, of which Layton is one, have been paid back on their original operating expenses. So basically, we've been made whole. And because of the revenue generation from some of these, advances in Bozeman, Montana, and Idaho Falls, and a couple other places, they're actually able to share some profit back to the city to help, not just for dedicated to Utopia, but it can be used for pretty much anything in the budget. And it was $682,000 was our portion of it. So that's nice just to be able to have that back in the coffers, and that means that the hope is that those payments will continue, and that as revenue increases, that those payments will continue and hopefully increase.
Right.
And then we'll be able to see even more fruits of that. So, yeah, it was. They seem to be in a good position, and I've been to read the history of it and see what's gone on before. To be able to give that report is pretty amazing because of where it used to be. So, still, Layton's about mid-30s% take rate, which is actually pretty good. We have the most subscribers on the whole network by volume, even though West Valley is a part of it, because West Valley's take rate is substantially lower than ours. So considering our size and the take rate, I think we've done a pretty good job.
So is there going to be any push at all to kind of help getting more subscribers here? I know that we're pretty much at build out, but knowing that competition is beefing up their game, they're really going after this whole market. I think it's something that Utopia needs to focus on in order to protect what we've got and hopefully gain additional subscribers.
And they do that. They do that across all the network. In fact, the subscribers are going all across every city, including Layton. Layton's been historically, since we've built out, or committed to build out, we've had more subscribers coming on percentage-wise than Layton than any other place. So yeah, they continue to do that. They believe, we believe that like Zach said, you're 35, 36, 37% take rate, but we think we can eventually get to high 40s, maybe 50.
Well, I know it's substantially higher than what our model forecasted when we initially decided to go with this, which is great, but I think the more people realize just what a great service it is, we kind of end up seeing that here locally.
And I looked at some of the internals, because like on the debt financing, they have percentages of people who cancel and stuff like that. The churn rate is pretty low, it's 2%. So if you're growing beyond 2%, then you're raising that. And it's such a good service that, they're not going to get anything for the same price. Syracuse is starting up, I believe Clearfield as well.
Yeah, Clearfield's mostly built.
So it's, they're kind of moving. And the idea of the Bozeman and Idaho Falls is kind of bizarre, but it's just a way to increase the revenue that's being generated by Utopia, which they can then pass it on to us. So it's been a nice change. And just one anecdote, I had a resident who contacted, or resident dialogue with it said, well, I contacted Utopia and they told me that I don't have it in Layton. And I said, well, did they give you a reason? No, not really. Well, we got this person in touch with Roger Truman, who's the CEO of Utopia, and they worked it out, and there was a problem on Utopia's side with the address not showing correctly. Well, this person does have it. So Utopia has been willing to kind of meet them halfway and offer them some financial incentive to once you get on the system. So that's kind of a sorry we didn't have our things right. That's just one subscriber, but to me that's an indication that they're wanting to make it right with the city and trying to make sure that they continue that really good rapport they have with their customers, because that's what differentiates them from a Comcast and the CenturyLinks of the world, is that you have the CEO contact you directly and say, let me see if I can get you the service, and oh yeah, I actually can. It's not, you have to wait 3 hours on the phone to get someone from a different state to answer your question. So just a nice handout.
It's interesting because I have to say in the last 3 months, I've had 3 or 4 people that I know pretty well that I thought was on on Utopia, and they weren't. And the minute I started explaining it to them, all of them have now joined me.
One way that I've seen to be able to explain it to people is to think of it kind of like I didn't make this up, I saw it, so I'm not taking credit. But is to use it as kind of like the airport, right? That they did build the airport is the terminal, right? And any of these individual private companies can come in. We own the infrastructure that's involved, we own the airport, but if they want to go with whatever competition they can, so if they feel, oh, I only have Comcast or I only have Century, I think there's 19 providers in the city or that provide Utopia service, so you can really mix and match on what's best for your family, which is the whole point of the kind of the utility that fiber brings. So, yeah, pretty good.
I guess my point is you just,
Yeah,
you make an assumption that they already have it, and they don't.
Yeah, that's true.
So, okay, good. That's a good report. Thank you for that. Do you have anything, Clint?
The ramp commission met this week on Monday, and they have their fingers crossed for tonight.
Wow, I know, that's a tough one.
They're excited for tonight. But the focus of that meeting, we're going to actually meet again in July, which normally they don't do, is they have the application for the grants, and then there's a scoring sheet that the commissioners use to score the grant applications, and they're honing that in, the different scoring of what's most important. And
Just to help fine tune it and tweak it so you.
which was great. Yeah, it's just to make it even better. So they've made some assignments to go back and look at that sheet and come back with ideas, and then meet in July. Hopefully they'll finalize that and put it on the website so that people can start applying for grants in August for the next
cycle.
Yeah, so it's good, great. They're doing great.
Yeah, like I said, that's a good commission to have. It benefits so many people, and that's one that you got to constantly tweak just to make sure you're staying up with things. I mean, we have a good foundation, but it requires you to go on.
And we have 3 years left till it goes up or go over again.
Max. I thought it was 2, but it might be 3.
Oh, they were talking about it. Anyway.
It's coming around. Yeah. Did you have anything else?
Just Parks and Rec Commission met last week, really short meeting, just talking about Liberty Days and 24th of July. They're really excited. I told the mayor yesterday on the phone, but we've got a great commission, great people in that commission. They're excited to help with both of those activities. I mean, they talked about the schedule for the 4th of July, and it's just cram-packed, and they're all jumping in wherever they can to help out. So a lot of commend them for their work.
We probably need to get that schedule and share it with all of us. I mean, I know it's been published, but it'd probably be good just to.
I can get that.
It kind of helps us kind of stay on task for that day and the night before.
Yeah.
So. Okay, I'm going to take the liberty of making one report. So I mean, for last meeting I needed to, and I ran short, and then, but on the landfill board that I sit on, so the residential fees that are there for anybody taking a load in, a truckload in, so it's been at $5 for since 95, I think, 97, something like that. And so the board decided that, yeah, it's time to make that adjustment. So they've adopted it. There's actually signs already posted up there that it will go into effect July 1, but that $5 fee is going to jump up to $10, which is we're still significantly cheaper than any of the other places, but I just want you guys to be aware of that, so if you get any questions on it. I mean, at this point, nobody's questioning it even going through the gate.
Yeah.
When they've had it up there for 10 days now.
Do you know if the other rates will change, the per pound, per ton rate?
So the commercial rate already changed. It changed earlier because they were significantly lower than anywhere else, and they were getting, Weber County raised theirs, so all of Weber County was coming down to Davis County on their commercial loads, so, you know, we upped those rates to kind of compete with that, and so that's helped. I mean, although there's still a lot of those, but that's probably the most significant one. And then, of course, they actually have the mattress program that's they implemented, so if anybody brings in a mattress, they gotta charge for a mattress now, and that's $15. Even though there's a company here in Layton that opened up that is actually recycling those mattresses. So they kind of charge for them, but they have a drop-off area that people can set them there, and then this company comes in, picks them up, and takes them and does the recycling. So it's kind of a good thing. And then I also mentioned the glass. Remember that gentleman came in? So they are accepting glass drop-off now up there as well, so they'll be recycling glass. I mean, they're continually trying to improve, and that survey that they did back February, I think is when we started that, got the results on it, and so they've got a board or a smaller group put together that's now going to formulate a long-term plan based upon that feedback and the viability and of the landfill and trying to extend the life and have a bunch of options. So as that progresses, I'll kind of update you on that one as well.
Yeah. I did forget two things. One, nothing for us to discuss at length, but I got a letter from an elementary student, and he was asking us to look into affordable housing.
The elementary school.
An elementary school student. It came here, and I was like, oh, okay. So that's one thing. I know I've already brought it up before, and so I'm not the only one. There's an elementary student in Layton who also cares about that. The second thing is I saw it posted, and we got the memo in the Monday memos we get from the city about Monday being observed for the Juneteenth holiday. So I want to mention something about that in council meeting, just because. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys knew I was going to do that in advance. That's all.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, we're
One other.
Yeah, this is our
Zach
meeting.
reminded me, today the governor had his monthly press conference, and he does. And one of the reporters asked about fireworks restrictions with wildfires and such, and if the governor was going to move to restrict fireworks even more, and he said that he's been working with the league on the league board and then the mayors on more local, you guys make those decisions, municipalities, and shouted out Layton as a best practice with restrictions that we have, plus the two parks where we allow residents to come and fire off their aerials. So he said they were gonna do a press conference just devoted to fireworks in the next little bit. So I don't know if that's being done in coordination with the league, but anyway, it was good to hear our team fire shout out to it. I think it's the right way to do it.
It was the right way last year. I know we got a little bit of heat on that, but legally, it was the right decision. And I think legally again this year, it's the right decision. And the fact that we kind of adjusted those non-aerial zones, I think was smart. And, you know, again, here we are, we're relying on our staff. I mean, we hired them to be the experts, and we really need them to give us the facts so that we make the right choices.
We might get some calls on it. If he's saying it's the best practice, we might be calling fire chief or Alex or mayor.
Yeah, Kevin, Channel 2, I think he's contacted him earlier today and did a press release on it as a follow-up to, because the governor had mentioned that. So we've actually been doing it. There's Provo's done it for the last 2 or 3 years. We've actually been doing it for 10 years.
Yeah.
It's in my front yard.
It's a nice thing. So the fire people done a great job with that.
They have.
Citizens appreciate it.
Okay, let's get on with our regular scheduled work meeting here. We've got a few items here. Luckily, they're not all foreign to us, but we do need some additional information. So Tracy, it's kind of like your show, you and Steve, but I'll let you go ahead and start with item 1 there. or 2, excuse me.
So the first thing is to amend the water rates and the other fees as listed in the schedule by ordinance 2209. I don't have a slide to show those to you, they were in the packet, but the main categories are obviously the culinary water rates, water meters, so the meters that we sell to developers, the price of those has gone up, so the fees in the schedule went up. Street lighting fixtures and the installation of those fixtures, that was part of the fees, and those have increased just based on our contract to purchase them and have them installed. And then adding the secondary water rates and a fee to our schedule, so it's not an increase in the price, but we needed to get those fees into our fee schedule, and so that's what this does. You may have noticed on the secondary water ones that when it came over the $250 amount has been discussed, but what shows up in our fee schedule is $20.83 per month. If you divide 250 by 12, then you come up with that amount rounded. So that's in there, and then the secondary reconnection fee of $500, that was an amount that was brought over from Case Creek as people, it's a little bit higher fee, but it was placed that way on purpose to discourage people from disconnecting from the service when they have it available, because that was allowed previously with Case Creek. I don't know if the city's made a final determination on that or not, but anyway, that's where that stands. I don't know if there are any questions on any of these changes in fees.
Just in general, I had a citizen reach out and just ask, with say the Gordon trunk line that we have in the plan in the future for secondary use. And this citizen doesn't have access to secondary, but he pays culinary. He said, I'm fine with the increased rate for my culinary water, but I don't want to pay for someone else's secondary infrastructure. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So are those divided where that fund comes from that pays for the secondary, or is it all one pool?
Steve may jump in and correct me, but the way they restructured it back in the master plan and rate study was a system, right? And so the culinary and secondary work together as a system. You do have separate rate structures depending on if you have it or not, but the idea was that if we bring more secondary into the system, then the culinary rates won't need to go up even more than they are, right? So in a way, your current culinary rates are being, each system is kind of subsidizing each other, right? If we don't bring more secondary into the system, your culinary rates are going to go up even more. And so I don't know if that's a simple answer, and I don't know if that's the whole answer, but
yeah, I mean,
that's what I remember from the
we don't build
meetings
this.
back then.
If we don't build this trunk line for secondary, we're going to build just as big of a trunk line for culinary somewhere else to try and bring that water in. And so,
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. Just a conversation that we had.
Yeah.
So, and I know, and it gets confusing for me even when there's so many different. There's several different rates if you have the option for secondary or you don't. So, okay.
And when we went through this, 2020, I don't remember. When we didn't
Yeah.
raise the rates,
Yeah.
one of the conversation was, yeah, we need to, and with Case Creek as well, like there's the water there for secondary to make sure that we can have enough culinary. So there's rates, I understand that, but to use secondary for your irrigation and not culinary allows us to have enough culinary. We're just assuming we're gonna have culinary, but who knows?
No, that was part of the argument.
Yeah, that was-
that we need to bring that into the mix.
So it's part
because
available,
That built up in a certain amount of water.
equation of, yeah, so
Well, that was part of the overall plan
Yeah,
that was
master
adopted back 18, 19,
yeah.
17, yeah.
Which is,
So,
I just have a question about on the fee schedule on page 6, and my apologies for not sending this sooner, but All of the other dates and everything were amended, but it says after water and water service effective December 1, 2019. So since those rates below are changing, that should probably also be changing July 1, 2022.
Dawn.
Don's been on it.
Goes to Dawn. I love it.
That's a compliment.
Yeah, well, this is good.
I'm usually prior to this meeting, but it's been a busy quarter, so
What's that?
my apologies.
Just make sure I get it on the list. Just double check the date.
No, that date needs to just come out.
Okay,
You're right.
and that's
That
fine, either
December-
way.
That December 1st was the rates.
And somewhere in there,
forecast for that.
it said truck and it was RR instead of the TR. I can't remember where that was at. I noticed that too, and I thought,
In these rates?
no, it was in our packet.
Um,
When I was reading it, I remember going, oh,
On the fee schedule?
it's somewhere in the packet. I just remember reading that going, oh, typo.
Page 61.
Yeah, no, I'm not getting.
Second paragraph down.
Sometimes you get so focused on the little red numbers, you forget to look at the giant big blaring one right above it, right?
Yeah.
I just figured since we were cleaning up, I mean, you added dollar signs, which was great, so I figured the whole thing should just be cleaner.
Thank you.
You know what, I think it's in the budget. I remember it now, it was in one of the budget items. In the line items there. Okay, we'll move on. Any other questions or discussion regarding the water rates? If not, we'll go ahead and go on.
So
Did you
maybe-
have a
I'm
question?
sorry, would this be
Go
a
ahead.
good time to talk about what Christine and I had talked about, maybe in terms of the timing?
Sure,
To see if that's,
yeah, let's do it.
we just come up with that in the regular meeting.
That's a good idea. So I know that, there's a concern as far as people wanting to know when can they water, are we doing 1 day a week, are we doing 2 days a week? If you're Weaver Basin's announced they have 2 days a week. Here at the city, as far as anybody that's on culinary, we ask them to be on 1 day a week, based upon all the information we had at that time. And obviously, with the rainfall and the precipitation that we've received, as well as, and I'll chalk it up mainly to conservation. I mean, honestly, our citizens are doing a great job there as well. I think we need to have the discussion about, do we want to go to 2 days a week on as well? Myself, I feel like it's super confusing for our residents. It's hard for people to get it, even though you know if you're a Weaver Basin water user or not. And I know that I'm not. So I should know, but it's this discussion, are you 2 days or 1 day? Because they hear 2 days out there that's being promoted by 2 entities. Now it was just Davis and Weaver, and now Weaver Basin's doing it. So I think that's a discussion we need to have. Obviously, according to what we're reading, I think we would be okay doing that. I've done some additional research, and if you guys remember, back when we went down to the league, there was that gal that did the study on the lawns, remember she was studying all the different types of sod and the type of watering and all of that. And her take is also that, yes, we're okay to go 2 day based upon what's available. So the confusion will be is those that are not picked up to secondary, they still need to use culinary water. And I think we've made it clear. You can use what you're being paid for. We're all given a base amount of gallons. You can use up to that amount. If you go over, then you'll get dinged. But again, it's messaging that we need to kind of, I guess, solidify here.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mayor, I don't think I communicated that question very well, so I apologize, but that is one of the issues. What I was thinking about was that,
Okay.
I'm sorry, I failed you there, is in terms of on the out in the regular meeting agenda, we have the adoption of the consolidated fee schedule, which includes the water rates. And the mayor and I had talked about moving
that
that,
item.
because it's doing the
Yeah.
hearing on the budget,
Yeah, that,
pulling item C off consent, dealing with it after the public hearing. So then you would, does that make sense?
Yep.
So I apologize, I didn't make that more clear.
okay. I know we had both those discussions.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we don't get a chance to really visit regarding these type of items, so I mean, I guess I'm gonna exercise our rights here. Let's, kind of tell you what you guys think, just so you know.
The procedural question or first?
Well, procedural question to me, that's a given, but are you okay with that, changing that item?
I mean, I think that people are gonna be here. I mean, the consolidated fee schedule is part of the budget.
Yeah.
I mean, so if someone's here and they're gonna be speaking about the water rate increase specifically in the budget that we already have passed in consent items, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we have a presentation, the mayor, we're prepared to show you if you'd like to have it on the kind of the justification and the data around the change, the recommendation and change. And so then we're excited to hear your, regardless of what the sequence is, to hear your corrections to us or suggestions about what's the data that you believe based on your interaction with the public that's most important for us to try to communicate tonight to educate the public. So we may have more than we need, we may have less, but
Yeah.
we felt this was a really important meeting to make sure we're focused on responding to the questions you're getting and maybe ask.
And that's about the number of times to water.
Well, the number of times, what's the reason we races went from 2 to 1? What's the data around that? And there's feelings, obviously, a range of feelings. Some of this is arbitrary, was we put a problem or not. We were able to get some good information that they put together that shows there is. And then for us to be able to sort of, some of you are concerned about is we did our due diligence. So we're looking at this independently and maybe coming to the same conclusion, or are we just moving because somebody else is moving? And so we try to put this back together as well. Not to be presumptuous, try to be helpful in taking your direction.
To add to the confusion of this, those who have Weaver Basin secondary water and are metered, so that's,
Yes,
we're
so now
metered.
yeah.
They went from weekly allocation, you have so much water, you can water any day you'd like. It's not 1 day, it's not 2 days, whatever you want to do, up to until you're out of that water. Once you're out of that water, then they start to dig in. That changed the same day that they announced for the unmetered to be able to go to 2 days. Now it's a monthly allocation, and it's doubled. So now you're being metered for the month. You get a monthly allocation that you can see online when you do it. But again, you can water whenever you like. So there are swaths of the city that are Weaver Basin metered that are like, what? 1 day, what, 2 days? What? No, what?
Yeah,
That's not, we didn't pay for that. And so that's, it's back to my thought, you've got Weaver Basin, we're looking at them as experts. They're looking at this, they're setting it, at least we hope they are, and that they have said, well, because we're here, whatever here means, whatever X that X is, then now we're able to, we hit that milestone, good, now we can go to 2 days a week. What's that X? And I can't find that anymore. It just, all of a sudden, you can do double, and so if we can, this is just my feeling, if we can do something similar, because we've been kind of following Weaver Basin, all right, well then it might make sense that there's this data pointing out here, you've conserved, there's been storms, we're at this level, now we can move. We might have to move back if,
Yeah.
but at least we know and it's not just we should move back now to 1 day a week because it's hot out. We don't want that, nobody wants that, so just want some data. And you want to move to 2 because we've hit that point, great. It's just think people want to know how come, what's the data behind it, so that's my thought.
Yeah, and great statement. That we hope that we have that information to be able to answer your questions and the council. The other thing that is important, and the citizens, the other thing that's important to remember, which you do, is that sometimes people, I think there was a comment made in the last council meeting about the Weaver Basin does their own thing and the city's completely separate from Weaver Basin, but that's not true. 50% of the water we get is under contract from Weaver Basin, so what they do or don't do affects Lake City residents. And by the modification, and there's some other modifications or liberalities that they've added, just like you were talking about, making more water available, because there's more water available, that actually benefits the city as a whole, because that means we have to pull less of our own water out of the ground, right? And when you're using those contracts, which we're having to pay for anyway. So that's a benefit that spills to every citizen, whether you have
It's regardless of what system you're
Secondary, Weaver
on.
Basin secondary, but
Yeah,
because of the culinary drinking comes through our system, but it comes out of Weaver Basin.
Weaver Basin reduced our M&I by what, was it 60% or something?
So it's 10% for
10%.
indoor and 60% for outdoor.
So with these changes like that, did they give us more money?
Yeah.
Give us more water back?
Yeah,
We'll show that.
We'll show how much that was, or
Well,
the
let's see.
performance.
I didn't mean to hijack the discussion. We felt like that was part of the discussion about water rates and budget
Yeah.
would be together, because that would be your primary questions on the budgets. Correct. Is that okay, Mayor?
absolutely. Like I said, I think this is good, and I don't know, my take is this is something that, a lot of people do log into this meeting, but it's more importantly out there, I think.
And then one final thing, I apologize, and then we thought that we could, back to the initial question you asked.
Yes,
Then, if everybody feels comfortable about that, that could be announced and stated tonight in some form. This is what we are going. Then we have media prepared under either scenario to get that out immediately. But I feel like it's important to have this discussion and get the direction. So that's our thought anyway. After Dave, what direction you give us.
Yeah, so just to kind of reiterate, I think I explained in a budget meeting back in March, we talked about this drought contingency plan that Weaver Basin has. The region participates in that. This really comes down to that plan. The plan is being followed, it's being monitored, and that plan was put in place for this exact scenario. And from the beginning, as we've talked, nobody wants to have these restrictions in place. They are extremely difficult for everybody. They're not fun for any of us to have to manage, but that's what we have to do in order to be responsible. And part of this plan has always been, we monitor this, and if we can relax those those restrictions, then the Weaver Basin has always committed to doing that. And this is the result of those things. So real quick, I'm not going to spend a lot of time. This is the Drought Monitor from 2020, this time last year. This is the Drought Monitor this year. So you can see a lot of the state has moved from the worst, which is exceptional drought, to extreme drought. And the Davis County area is kind of in that severe drought instead of in the extreme drought area. So does that mean we're out of the woods? No, it means we're still not doing great, but we're better off than we were last year according to this chart.
And that's a recent,
This is
recent
from
evolution.
This is from June 7th. Yeah, so I mean, this is real time as we can get, because the storms we've been having, the weather. So I showed this graph before, but it stopped right here last time. This is the rest of the graph for the snow water equivalent. You can see we had a really dismal February. We started getting some storms in March, and then we kind of had a lull again, and then about middle of April, we started having kind of these cyclical rainstorms that were producing some snow in the mountains, and it moved down. And then you can see this is the Memorial Day storm. Everybody knows about it. It put almost 4 inches or plus 4 inches of water into this basin at the time. So it didn't really, blow anything up and get us all the way over here to the right where we want to be, but we held our own in the spring here with these cyclical storms. What it also did, though, is you can see the soil moisture kind of was really great this fall in November, December, January. Then it kind of leveled off, and then those storms started coming. It really pushed that soil moisture up. Every time it started to dip, it seemed like we got another storm. And then this is the soil moisture number from the Memorial Day storm right there. So you can see that spike. What those soil moisture numbers did is allowed the water to run off into the reservoirs better than what we probably would have seen had this trend before that Memorial Day storm even. You can see that trend really starting to dry out. So this is the reservoir, and these two numbers, these are from today. These are the charts from today, so they are real-time data. This is the current reservoir storage for this area as of yesterday. It's important to note that not all of these reservoirs are completely owned by Weaver Basin, but a lot of them are. But Willard Bay is only 47% full. You got Pineview at 67. Some of the other reservoirs are full, but they are full because of the strategic management that Weaver Basin is doing. They are watching this constantly, trying to ensure that we have not only water for this season, but water for next season. The drinking water that we use is stored in these reservoirs. These are 2-year storage reservoirs. And it is important that we understand that if it moves down to a certain point, it can no longer be treated for drinking water. So with that, let's jump into what the city's been doing. So the average high temperature in the city over the last 2022, the last 2 months was 3 degrees lower in April and 5 degrees lower in May. Now, does that mean it saved us? Well, not really, but it really helped with the evapotranspiration requirements because it dropped those down, and the overall requirement for water need per quarter acre lot dropped by 5.8%. So on top of not needing as much water, because the water restrictions were in place, we saw a huge decrease in the water use in the month of May. We have, as you can see, 2020, we've left 2020 in here because 2020 was the result of, or was the year we didn't have any restrictions. 2022, we saw a reduction of about 45 million gallons below what was used last year, which is actually 60 million gallons below what was used in 2020. This red line indicates a number that is 237 million gallons less than what was used in 2020. It's actually 157 million less than even last year's numbers. So in all, we're estimating that if you went based on the need, that the evapotranspiration numbers would be, we've saved or conserved essentially 250 million gallons in these last 2 months. What does that mean for us? It means that we've seen, well, okay, so, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, part of that has to do with effective conservation.
Yeah.
And part of that's because a lot of people, I think, the systems came on board, some of the secondary systems came on board
Later.
middle of May rather than middle
Much later.
of, so other people who were even in culinary, I think, have adopted that mindset. So it's a combination of a delayed start, and also when it did start, people are using it more carefully. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, exactly. So
people are responding.
people are,
Message.
the habits, the things that are being seen are happening. People are not watering during these rainstorms for the most part. I mean, there's always that outlier, but people are not watering. I know myself, I haven't even watered twice this year. There's a lot of people who have done that to make sure that they understand we've had a rainstorm, it's enough rain to keep their stuff growing. And then they've answered the call. We've asked them to only water once a week, and people have done it. And so that's really kind of the answer right here, is because of the storms, because of the temperatures, because of the conservation and the late start to the system, then the runoff was better than projected because of the soil moistures. Weber Basin has gone to their drought contingency plan, and they said we were in tier 5 here. We were in the extreme level. And now, because of the data that they have as of this June 1st information, they've decided that they can go into the tier 4 level. And what that means in the number of restrictions is that we started out here with 60% on the culinary, 40% on the agricultural, and 60% on the outdoor M&I, with a 10% reduction. And now that they've got these numbers, essentially the runoff is done. They know where they're at, and so they feel comfortable moving into that severe restriction range, which allows for not 60% reduction, but 40% reduction in the outdoor secondary use, 30% reduction in the agricultural use, and then still a 10% on the culinary.
I guess that means we can plant pumpkins and squash.
So the normal advisory, moderate, severe, extreme,
Yeah.
exceptional, are they using the same metrics as the first?
No, they're not the
It's
same.
not the same.
No, this is a plan-specific advisory response levels to the program, and so that's what they've decided to do now that they have the data and the information they have. And then to your point, Zach, they had given us a restricted allotment from our contract based on this tier 5, and they have adjusted that this month up into the tier 4. So the question is, if you're on culinary, can you still water once or twice? Well, they've adjusted their allotment to the city in order to account for watering twice a day for all those M&I outdoor users as well. So from a modified water restriction, it's pretty simple. Water twice a week, but use the same type of schedules. And then, as you mentioned, Clint, people on meters are not held to the same type of things, but at least it's, helping those that don't have a meter understand what needs to go on. The new landscapes still need to adhere to these water restrictions. The 1 day a week hand watering for established trees and shrubs, that was always there for everybody. They still were asking people not to hose down sidewalks or driveways. The agricultural contracts have been reduced by 30 instead of 40. And the wholesale retail secondary is reduced by 40 instead of 60. But then all of the indoor use is still 10%. So
when does Weaver Basin look at this again? Are they constantly monitoring it?
every day. Yeah,
I know they're looking at it every day, but when do they make the determination of when they move from each of those areas?
Well, so this is based on their June 1st storage level requirements. And so they feel like as of June 1st, with the demands that are on the system, if they're in these levels, then they can make it to the end of the season based on using these types of restrictions. So that's the season. I can't promise that they're not going to have to go back to the 1 day a week, but the anticipation is that they've done enough to feel comfortable to say, yes, we can relax this to where we are. But let me remind everybody, 2 days a week is still a restriction. And it's basically the restriction we had last summer and throughout that summer. So you're still going to see the same impacts to our water system as far as revenues and as far as people needing to be conservative. But we feel like we're at a place where it would be appropriate to move that dial and allow that 2 days a week to keep people.
Maybe last point, I just guess we've only had secondary water available for 2 weeks from the May 15th to June 1st. Maybe 2 weeks of data, at least secondary, and then it's like we're good. It just seems like that's not enough time. It's early in the season. I don't know. They're experts, but
Yeah.
I think sorry, get an opinion from a non-expert engineer, but
yeah, no, that's
I think we're the main, you guys have to ask those questions, but to me, as I thought about it, it's not the same thing as that when you go to that one sheet to show the droughts, and really the metric that we're looking at, it seems to me that the key metric is the reservoir storage.
Yeah.
And so they know from experience that if the reservoir storage is X, barring some significant change in pattern, in usage pattern, there's a predictability between your storage levels and your ability to get through the system and still, as I thought about it, I think that's what they're really driving at. There's a lot of secondary metrics that might happen, but historically, if those reservoirs end the runoff season, which it is, and this is the time now, right? And they're at this level, then with this restriction, we're going to be good. Because essentially what we're moving back to now is what we were at last year. And they know what those usage patterns were last year. And there's probably more consciousness now, but that's how I try to explain it.
It's
It's so soon.
such saturation level for the runoff. Makes sense.
Yeah. We would be, as Steve said, I think we would be surprised just based on how they do things that this would be something that they didn't anticipate would hold through the season. I mean, that, but
So they still are anticipating shutting off early in September, but as far as they're going to watch that as well, obviously, and maybe they go back and say, hey, weather-wise, it's time to go back to one. I know that Davis Weber is saying that once Labor Day hits, they want everybody to go back to 1 day, and so that's just a calendar item that has nothing to do with the water. But I would say at this point, to reduce the confusion for everybody, it would be prudent to follow these restrictions and allow people to go to twice a week, and then we'll just do our continuous education, helping people understand what we're trying to accomplish. Is there any other questions I can answer on that?
thank you for doing this. And that's probably a direction you can give us now if you feel comfortable, as opposed to after the hearing. I'm not better than the other, but you have to have a formal, you can give us that direction based on your head nods as opposed to voting an ordinance or something like that.
I'm good with it, given Steve's, all that data is really good and it's helpful, and I'm looking at it from my standpoint, we're so much better off than last year.
Yeah.
The temperature, the ground level, or the ground moisture, the soil moisture, we're in a lot better place than last year, so I'm in favor of lessening the confusion from all of the residents that have so many different water providers.
I agree. I'm the 2 days.
That's good. Zach, while you're pondering, let me ask Dave. Dave? Okay. Give him a minute to come off mute to see if he's in favor of 2 days a week watering. Dave?
Hey,
Okay.
I'm in favor of 2 days a week.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Looks like we got a unanimous.
No,
Yeah,
I just feel, I mean, it's just, I understand we want to be data driven, I understand that we want to make decisions based on data, which I understand, but it just seems to me that we have been spending a lot of political capital to talk about how this was a new normal, we need to start planning this for the future, we need to start doing X, Y, or Z, and then 2 weeks after we start that, they decide, well, actually, this rainstorm has really saturated things, so we can go back to last year. When I think that if I had my choice, we would have just stayed with it maybe for a little bit longer to see if it was sustainable. Let's say, you know, I don't know. I just feel like if you go back to 2 days a week, people are going to think that things are better, things are okay. I just don't know how you unring the bell and get people back to where we had it before. And so it seems like a lot of talk to basically change midstream. So I understand that we have, you know, I'm not, detracting from the people that we were basing for giving these, you know, the data makes sense. It just seems like, and I don't want to give them a hard time as if they had to make a decision based on what the facts were then. And then we had an intervening event, the storm and the lower temperatures and people conserving that, you know, made things different now. But it's just, I just think it undercuts our ability to have any sort of authority on this subject moving forward, because in the middle of July, when they come back and say it's actually 1 week, we're going to be back to 1 week again. And we can just say, well, we're just following the data, which is fine, but I don't know. I just feel like we did a lot of that for no benefit whatsoever.
Reminds you of COVID.
Yeah. I guess my thought on that, Zach, as I listened to Steve when he said 2 days a week is still a restriction. That's we're asking people.
You gotta have
Their yards
confidence in
are-
your residents.
People will water their lawn every day, and so this is still a restriction.
Okay, we still have quite a few items that we need to cover. Are we good to
So
just
no,
go ahead
yeah,
and move on?
I'm willing to.
I just hope that if they move, we move also.
Yeah.
And if it's back, it's back, and then we're fine. That's.
Just real quick, Mayor. So on your note, Zach, I think about Preston Cox, a citizen that talked last week, and I don't believe 1 day a week through the summer is sustainable. I don't think it can be the new normal. We're going to lose too much of our landscapes and everything, but the way I understood it, this was the plan, the hope at least, to go, you know, the middle of the summer to go to 2 weeks or 2 times a week. So I understand your concern, but I don't think we let up on, we're still needing to conserve.
Yeah.
How
Right.
we can do this like we did it last year.
Yeah. Well, then it is what it is.
I think Steve, maybe some of, you know, a lot of suggestions on it. I think as far as our repurposed water, you know, your bath water, your dishwater, however you repurpose that in your yard would be the best thing to go. I mean, we kind of emphasize that. I know that really goes back, geez, back in the 20s and 30s, 40s back then, but, you know, it worked then, it's got to work now. I think that's going to help, because it's really, even though it's indoor water and that's only 10%, it really helps on the other side with the trees and everything. So, all right, we got a few items here. We got to move on, because we're not going to get through them. Okay, let's go on to item number 3 then. Missy, do you want to?
Yeah, I guess I could just ask up front if there's any questions about the amendments. Has anyone run through the schedules? Most of this is just recognizing grants that we've received that weren't on the books originally and other funds that have come in. Any questions? I guess so, when to add one item, when I ask for you to adopt the ordinance, I'll have you do it with one modification from the list. I had a last minute amendment come in from Davis Metro for $17,500 to increase the amount of their buy money as they came down. We still have 2 weeks left in this month, and it didn't make it into the schedule. We were just informed about it, I think, yesterday or the day before. So I'll bring up that modification so when it's adopted with the one modification.
And where that, do you have where that's coming from? Is it just being transferred from general? Or
So the funding will be from a HIDA grant, so it's a high intensity drug trafficking grant. So they're just recognizing more of their grant revenue in this fiscal year and increasing the amount of their expenditure line. So it's not funded from reserves or anything like that. It's grant money. They
It's just getting on the books.
Yeah, they can draw down now rather than wait.
Yeah, I saw that grant, I just didn't know if it was, they could get more of it, or it was, yeah, so, thank you.
And then are we okay with that?
I think we're good. Yeah, let's move
And
on forward.
the last item I have would be the budget, and my intent tonight would be just to cover some highlights like I did in the last meeting. The public hearing's still open, so I go back through some of these highlights. I added the public safety dispatch and records building onto the highlights and changed the numbers just a little bit. In case you look at the last presentation, most of that has to do with utility projects because we increased those based on our current projected costs rather than what they were maybe 6 months ago, which have changed pretty significantly. And then the water rate increase on here as well. I do have some slides that go through the water rate increase, some of our reasoning, mostly related to inflation, disruption of our plan, the fact that we have a plan, and that we want to maintain a system that provides good quality, dependable water, and that there's been a drought, but great conservation efforts that have helped the system. Then to show what the culinary rate base rates would change, the excess consumption rates, that the first one's 15, this is 20. These first two are 15% increase, these last two are 20, and commercial churches and schools are 15% increase. Then to show.
Can you be sure, when you go back 2 slides, the next one, or previous, when you explain this, and I know you do it briefly and you do a great job, but can you make sure that you mention that the majority of the residential are in that first one?
And that the bulk of the rest is commercial.
Yeah,
Yes.
like
Good point.
95%, whatever the percent is, I know it's high, but make sure that you highlight that,
Okay.
please.
Yep, absolutely. And then to show, even with the increase where we're at for 10,000 gallons, and then this is what a minimum monthly bill will look like with a $3.10 increase on water, no increase on garbage this year. So, and those are the slides that I have.
So is the data that have you seen that plus what Steve presented with regard to his strategically from based on the questions you're getting? Would you like us to, is that sufficient? Would you like us to modify that and emphasize? Do you want to bring in some of the water discussion justification around the change from 1 day to 2 day, or leave that aside and just focus on this, or mix and match? We can do any of that.
It's hard because, I mean, you're talking infrastructure is what really the rates are all about, but yet usage is what is first and foremost in people's mind.
I try to talk to people about the reason for the water rate increase is because we need to pay for projects.
Yeah.
So we have to make sure the system works. So I didn't necessarily connect the water rate increase to the drought.
Yeah.
At least I never have.
No, I haven't either, but I mean, It
See how
seems
people
to be,
react to
that seems to be more prevalent in people's mind versus what, tonight's meeting's really about. Which, I mean, we're doing our job by making sure everything's funded and so we can continue to be sustainable into the future.
So on that, I think one thing I've had to explain to residents a few times is we're not paying, when we've had this conversation, we're not paying for the water, we're paying for the delivery of the water, we're paying for the system. And I think that needs to be said, because I've heard the comment on social media, oh, so we're saving water and we're paying more. But that's what I've seen all my life, And another thing to share is we're seeing inflation everywhere. The city's not immune to that. So we're seeing that on the back end to produce, to do these projects. So it's costing more to deliver the water. It doesn't matter how much water. So I think that needs to be emphasized. Okay.
I think there should be something said about the watering the days of the week. That's the confusion currently happening. And to have a city council meeting and not talk about it, we're talking about it here, but this isn't the city council meeting.
Right.
You want
But does it need to be a part of the budget discussion?
That's what I was saying.
No.
the thing.
I think it is part of that. I mean, I don't want to not spend, but it needs to be.
Well, I think
I guess I'm just talking to what Alex was asking. I don't know, you didn't connect it with the budget, did you?
Well, I didn't know whether you wanted to or not wanted to.
Steve's presentation, I think, can be separate.
Yeah.
Just to drive
So
it.
I
You
think,
asked if you
I
asked
think we do it after the budget, right?
But Alex had asked
No, you're
earlier
right, he asked
if we wanted
Yeah.
to do it here or talk in there, and I prefer that we mention it in
In
there.
there. I think we need to, because I
Just
think,
like you said, if I smoke a drought up there,
I made
Yeah.
a presumption
Yeah,
that you
just-
wrong, that some of the budget that had questions to do about water. That may be
Yeah.
what a lot of people heard tonight. But how that addressed, does that help in that discussion? But Steve, you'll just.
we could totally, we got to go into post our meeting here, but I'm looking at the item and realistically, this decision as far as what day we water, we really could address that early on. I'm thinking maybe if we say that clear up here in the,
So the recommendation would be to put it under unfinished business.
really? Because I'm thinking if we move it clear up here on
Consent.
event announcement, even though it's not an event, that may let people know, so if people are coming in for that specific reason, their answers are gonna be, they're gonna get their answer early, is what I'm trying to say.
Either one would be
Either
fine.
question.
So, but you're our legal counsel, so we gotta take guidance from
Either
you.
one would be fine.
What's gonna legally
I
keep
see your
us?
analysis or your reasoning there.
There could be benefits to the budget, the water discussion in the budget, if that's discussed beforehand,
Yeah,
or maybe not that,
If you discuss it during the consent
before.
item, like
Before,
the actual
so-
hearing, you can do that as well. I think you can do it in 3 places. Mayor's, in a consent, as a consent item where you have the opportunity of discussing back and forth items, and you're discussing water as a whole while we're discussing water and rates, and you can put it there, or you can put it in unfinished business because we have talked about it.
well, that's
in the
gonna
past.
move to the bottom of my agenda item anyway, under consent.
That's true.
So,
it'd be
there
very
again,
close.
it's gonna be at the tail end, so it comes back to what I kind of think at the beginning, which, you guys weigh in on, what's your take? I mean,
Or
or
have
option
somebody-
number 3,
if
door
you-
number
this
3.
is number 3. If you have somebody stand up and ask about that item in citizen comment, you can then address it and say, this week, we're looking at this, and this is why we're doing it, and what we're gonna do. You can do it there as well if you wanted to. But it probably would fit into either of those categories. If you want to do it up front, do it under the presentations, that would be fun. It'll work. Wherever you do it, you're right. So the important thing is that the people have the opportunity to hear about it.
I would.
That's me. I'm thinking if we address it up front, it's gonna help with the rest of it.
There you go.
I'm gonna just say that's where we're going with it.
And your lawyer told you you could.
You can bail me out later. So be prepared up front then.
You want the whole presentation?
On the update, the drought update.
Just the whole drought?
Just the drought
That's what I
update.
just, okay.
Yep. And just say we've had a previous I'll just say we've had this discussion. We feel like we need to update our citizens on what the status is and how we're gonna proceed going forward. Okay. All right, we have,
So they're gonna start looking.
okay, so that takes care of items 1 through 4 then. But we need to, are you gonna go over this or are you just gonna wait?
No, I'm just
Okay,
messing
you're
around
good,
now,
right?
sorry.
Okay, because I'm looking at the clock here. Okay, let's go ahead then. I'll need a motion for us to go out of our regularly scheduled council work meeting and go into a special closed door meeting to discuss the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property, including the former water rights or watershed. Okay, moved by Tyson. Do I have a second there?
Second.
Second by Clint. Okay, so we'll give these guys a minute to fill the room. Went out to our Layton City Council meeting for June 16th. We apologize for a little slight delay here, but also I want to acknowledge the fact that we do have a full quorum. We have Council Member Dave Thomas that is online. So he participated in our work meeting as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to Councilmember Bloxham to conduct our prayer and pledge as he so pleases.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I asked a religious leader in the community to give the opening prayer today, but he's come down with an illness, so I'm going to pitch in for him. So I'm going to say the opening prayer, and then I'll ask us to follow with the Pledge of Allegiance afterwards. Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for the many blessings that we've been given. We're grateful especially to have peace, and we're grateful for this land that we live in and the freedoms we enjoy. We're grateful for the city that we live in, and we ask to please bless those who are first responders and fire and police and public works, that they may be blessed for helping keep our city moving forward. We ask you for blessings as we discuss and deliberate over the items that are on our agenda today, that we may have wisdom to decide the best for the citizens, and that we may have your guidance in doing so. We're grateful for the residents of our city, and we ask you to please bless them in all that they do. And we ask for these favors and blessings in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
The pledge of me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Thank you, Councilman Bloxham. Council, we'll go on to our municipal announcements. I know there's probably a few of them that's coming up, in particular for the July 4th holiday, but Tyson, you want to go first, maybe?
I don't have the list, but it's available online. A lot going on the 4th of July in Layton City, and great time to celebrate the country we live in. So go to laytoncity.org. Is it .org? I'm sorry. Yeah. and go to the Parks and Recreation tab and look for the Liberty Days calendar of events.
Okay, along those same line, though, we have our nominations are still open for our hometown heroes. So we want to make sure if you guys know of anybody, please nominate them. I mean, this is about your neighbors, and that's what we want to know is, if you know that special person that kind of goes the extra mile or something and that they deserve to be acknowledged, we want to know about that. Also, we have the Voices of Freedom concert the Sunday night before here in our amphitheater. So again, like Councilmember Roberts said, there's a lot of these activities. And also, we're looking for float entries. We still have the opportunity to have float entries. So if you guys have any businesses, or if you want to create a float on behalf of your family, that'd be great. I mean, that's what this is about. It's about showing our patriotism, not only to our country, but also for our city. So I'll go ahead and turn the time over. I think Councilmember Bettina Smith-Edmonton has some announcements as well.
I do. Thank you, Mayor. I have a couple of announcements. One is for the Davis County residents in the Latino community. There is a emergency preparedness event. It will be on June 23rd from 6 to 8 p.m. It will be in Kaysville, but they're focusing on Kaysville and Layton City, and that will be at 200 North Flint Street in Kaysville. And then also, it's already been posted on the Layton City website and also posted on the doors here, but this coming Monday, June 20th, is going to be the observance of Juneteenth. Juneteenth is a holiday that has been accepted by our federal government, but also here locally. We are honoring that day as a celebration for recognizing there were slaves in 1865 that were made free, and they didn't know about it for 2.5 years. And so our state is now recognizing that holiday, and Layton City is offering that as a holiday for our employees, and just a day to celebrate, to educate, and to just enjoy time and just understand that we all share freedoms together.
And so I wanted to acknowledge that day. June 19th, moving forward, will be considered a holiday in our state. Thank you, Mayor, for that time.
And along those lines, I know that several other cities have adopted that as well. So, I mean, it's well deserved. Okay, council, does anyone else have any municipal announcements they'd like to share? I mean, we're going into the busy season, so I guess it's just like, yeah, be aware, get out, enjoy it while you can. Okay, we're going to go on to that covers item number 1 and number 2. And item number 3 is a time for verbal petitions and presentations. And as you can see on our agenda item, we do not have anything listed. However, as the mayor, I'm going to exercise my authority, and this is with the consent of the council here, because we did have a prior discussion in our work meeting regarding watering. And so we thought it would be in the best interest of our citizens if we could bring them up to date as far as the current status of the watering and how the decisions are made. So with that, I'm going to turn the time over to Mr. Steve Jackson, who is our internal expert, I'm going to call you, regarding this and helping us get the facts so that the decisions are based upon facts. So, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. It's good to be here with you tonight. A quick update on the water supply outlook and the drought as we move forward. This slide indicates or shows the drought monitor, the U.S. Drought Monitor for the whole state of Utah. You can see in 2021, the darkest color there is actually considered exceptional drought. The majority of the state was in exceptional drought this time of year in 2021. As of June 7th, the state is doing better. We're not out of the woods by any stretch, but we are not in the worst tier. We're mostly in the second worst tier. This area of Layton, Davis County is actually in the severe drought category right now, which is in the kind of orangish color there. What does that mean for us with our water supply and our snowpack levels, things like that? We've been watching them very closely with our partners at Weber Basin. As you know, we actually receive about 50% of our water from the culinary system through our partnership, our contract with Weber Basin. As you can see from this graph, this was a snow water equivalent graph all the way back from October through July. You can see we had some really good snowpack numbers as we headed from December into January, and then it just flattened off. We didn't really get any precipitation, held steady, but didn't really go up the way we had hoped. Kind of March time frame into April, we started seeing some storms, and those storms started producing more water in our snowpack, snow water equivalent. In the kind of mid-April range, we started seeing a real wet cycle of water that was being delivered across the state, especially in this northern Utah area. And so each one of those little bumps you see on that black line are one of the storm indicators. And then that furthest to the right peak is the Memorial Day storm that I think everybody knew about because it ruined a lot of people's plans, but it was well needed and really important for us. Along with the snow water equivalent numbers, even though we would have preferred them to be a lot higher than they were, we had a really fortuitous soil moisture event in late fall last year. The soil moisture was actually off the chart there. You can see it's even above the bluish lines there. But then again, when we didn't get a lot of rain through that January, February timeframe, soil moisture kind of dipped, but it was still well above average. And then again, through the March, April, May timeframe, each one of those storms, you can see the spikes in that graph as well that kept that soil moisture up high. And why is that important? Well, that's important because then it doesn't soak into the ground. It runs off into our reservoirs and refills them for us. And then again, you can see that huge spike right there on the right side in the black line that it indicates that storm from Memorial Day. But again, I want to emphasize this has been the pattern from March, April, May is really kind of different than what most of the forecasts were predicting and showing at the time. So current reservoir levels they're not full. Some of them are full, but others are 60% full, 47% full. I think statewide, the reservoir levels are about 63% right now. But we're doing better than I think most of us had anticipated in the water industry at this time of year with what we were seeing from the weather patterns that we were seeing before. We're definitely not out of the woods. We're not at a place where we can just say, hey, we're done, let's keep having a party, but we're still needing to restrict and conserve. But if we're judicious about it, the way we've seen these first, month and a half of the water season, I think we're in a decent spot where we can continue the course and do what we need to do. So from the city's culinary water use standpoint, we saw average high temperatures for April and May, 3 degrees and 5 degrees below the average temperatures that we were seeing in 2000 and 2021, or 2020 and 2021, excuse me. What that means is that the evapotranspiration, which is the need that plants have for water, was actually reduced, and that as well in terms of the need for a quarter-acre lot actually was reduced by about 5.8%. The real telling numbers is even though it only dropped 5.8%, we've seen a substantial effort by our citizens to conserve water. And this graph, the red bars there show that we were well below the number in 2020 and 2021 for May. This represents 300 million gallons of water approximately that was not used compared to 2020. It's about 200 million less than what we used last year in those first 2 months. So we estimate, based on the evapotranspiration need, whatnot, that there's been about 250 million gallons of water conserved just in the first 2 months of the water season. Now, granted, April's really kind of a half month because they typically don't have people watering until the middle, but people have listened. They've watered only once a week. They've turned their sprinklers off during the rainstorms, things like that, and it's really helped with the water outlook. So what does that mean for us? When we started the drought contingency plan that we use in conjunction with Weber Basin, it's their plan, but it's a regional plan. We started in that response level 5 of extreme, and based on the reservoir levels and where we were projecting those to be, that's where we started. That's why it was reduced the way it was. If I jump to the next slide, you can see we started out with secondary water and outdoor culinary water use being restricted 60% of what the normal would be. Agricultural irrigation was restricted 40%, as well as the indoor use 10%. And then the system started late. It was a difficulty on a lot of people. Even the agricultural users were impacted very heavily by these restrictions. But I think as a group, collectively, effort-wise, those numbers on that other chart show that there was a huge savings there. Now, with that, as we've evaluated these numbers, and Weber Basin has evaluated the numbers, they've determined that based on their storage levels that they can move into the response level 4. And that was always from the beginning, as we started looking at these restrictions, that they were going to evaluate and move appropriately based on this plan, so that there wasn't this excessive restriction that is placed on people if the water was there and if the numbers and the data show that's what they had committed to do. So they have determined that a response level 4 based on their reservoir levels after the runoff is appropriate. They've adjusted our contract that had been reduced appropriately, and so basically the outdoor watering restriction has moved from 60% to 40%. Agriculture has moved from 40 to 30, but the 10% indoor is still in effect. So from that standpoint, the modified water restrictions that are currently in place for Weber Basin as of last Sunday is that twice a week watering of lawns and gardens based on that same, schedule. If you have pop-ups, rotors, things like that. New landscapes need to adhere to the same watering restrictions as everybody else. Still 1 day a week hand watering of established trees and shrubs so that you can make sure that those high value, plants are still being taken care of. No hosing down of sidewalks and driveways. And then, as I mentioned, the agricultural contracts will be reduced by 30% instead of 40%. The wholesale retail secondary irrigation contracts are reduced by 40% instead of 60%. And then the others remain the same, 10% for indoor culinary use. And then they're still planning an early shutoff to the secondary irrigation agricultural system mid-September based on what we see coming up. And we're continually watching this to ensure that that happens. Now, it does need to be noted that these can adjust. We don't feel like the likelihood is high. We feel like there's been enough evaluation of the data that this is a conservative move for us to be able to allow 2 days a week throughout the hotter months of the summer. But if things drastically change and people start overusing the water, then Weber Basin has committed that they'll evaluate it and change it if they need to. And so we'll work closely with them and continue to work with them to make sure that we're doing what we need to do. But as a whole, our citizens have responded. We saw it last year, we're seeing it this year, and we hope that this is a welcome change as the council, if that's the decision that we move forward with this. But that is our recommendation, is to follow these modified water restrictions and allow that 2 days a week watering. So, other questions I can answer for you, or?
No, you did a great job on explaining this, and I think this is what, this governing body wants to do, is make sure our citizens are well informed so they understand why we make the decisions we do. And, I got to say my hat's off to our citizens because of their efforts. That's why we're able to do this. And as clearly stated, we need to continue to conserve where we can. And certainly if you don't need to water, don't. But, I know that we do follow Weber Basin, but Weber Basin is part of a larger group, as stated, so it isn't just that one entity. And also there's been other folks that have factored into this decision, and AKA the folks up at Utah State University as well as weighed in on this. So we feel very confident in this decision, but certainly support us in your efforts in continuing to conserve so that we can maintain this 2 days a week. And hopefully this will eliminate any confusion within our city. And if there's one thing I do want to stress, and that is that these guidelines will be posted on our website so that you can follow those. So, we've had instructions out there that if you're whatever number your address ends in, those are the days of the week that you need to water. Those will still be, we will repost those. We just felt like we needed to kind of make sure we had everything accurate before we post. So tomorrow on our website, hopefully all of this will go up and you can start sharing that with your friends and neighbors and make sure that, again, we work collectively as a community because that's what Layton residents do. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll move on to our citizens' comment portion. So if anyone's here to make a comment on an item that is not on our agenda, primarily the public hearing agenda. The public hearing agenda is where you are able to speak. The consent items, not necessarily so, but if you have something other than that, you're welcome to come up to the mic and state your name and kind of present your idea to us.
So this is the time for me.
You made it. You're lucky.
Okay, wow, that came fast. So we've planned on having a lot more bodies here, but we told people that we probably wouldn't get it up until 7:30. So people may trickle in as I'm talking. My name is Michelle Smith. My address is 2708 Skyview Drive. Let me start just by saying thank you to the council members we've already reached out to address the issue I'm going to present. Up on our street, and that includes the mayor. Joy is very familiar with what's going on. We have a very special opportunity that availed us up on Skyview Drive. If you're not familiar with that street, where the Antelope exit is on Hobbs Creek, and they put in the park and ride, is the area that I'm speaking to. So 8 years ago, a little over 8 years ago, when UDOT decided that they needed to grab up a lot of property for the expansion of 89, one of the homes on our street was purchased and demolished. And that was so they could increase that Hobbs Creek area and make the turnaround for the buses at that bus stop. We approached UDOT and worked with them and the city at that time. And I believe it was Ryan Pickup. Does that sound like who was over? Ryan, I'm not sure of his last name, was over landscaping. And long story short, my son worked with the city to do the landscaping on the road there, so it looks pretty going into Skyview Drive. We all pitched in and bought a large rock that says Skyview Drive as a street. And where that home was then made into a community garden. We have sent each and every one of you some pictures and a little bit of history. Did you all receive that email? I mean, I know you received the email. Did you all open that email? So thank you for those of you who took a moment to look at it. If you didn't and you have access to your email, it came from the name, last name Ride, W-R-I-D-E. And if you look at that email now, as we're speaking, that might provide a little bit more clarification. And if it went to your spam, you can look in your junk or spam folder. But I did receive each of your email addresses, and we sent that out Tuesday night, I believe. And we sent a second email with a picture of the Lorax. So those should be available to you. So it just shows that over the last 8 years, for those of you who have seen it, the progression of the community garden. The community garden, Shalane, do you have the statement? I can't find it on my phone. The community garden started out truly as a community garden where we each would go up and have little lots. And the city's contribution was only that they would make sure we had water access. That was it. Thank you so much. So let me read the statement that we came up as a street. Layton City Council members and Mayor Petro, we are Layton City residents who enjoy and cultivated the Skyview Community Garden. We are attending the City Council meeting. Oh, no, this is what you sent. Yes. Do you have the statement that we agreed on to read here?
Right here.
Thank you. Sorry for the confusion. We have improved, cleaned, maintained, beautified, and cared for a green space that has united a community and become a neighborhood gathering place. We have shared common goals while learning how to grow and beautify this space. We taught our children to work and love the garden. We have developed friendships and learned with each other for the past 8 years. It started with the residents of Skyview Drive, but it has now united multiple neighborhoods and friends from around the area. All are invited to contribute. We wanted to continue making this space beautiful and keep building community friendship. We appreciate your support with this invaluable community resource. What we're looking for from you, our goal tonight, is tell us what we need to do to keep it the community garden that it is. We recognize the importance of development, but UDOT purchased over 60 homes. And all of those homes will eventually, if they're still usable, come up and available for families to live in. But UDOT covered a lot of paradise with a parking lot. It is no longer the forest and beautiful place that it once was. It is now literally paradise covered in cement. We need some balance, and the community garden provides that opportunity. And like the Lorax, I have been asked to be the spokesperson for the street. And the Lorax knew, sorry, if we don't protect our Mother Earth, she will balance things out. And not in a way that we wanted. And if it means fire and devastation to get back what we need, that's what will happen. We need green space, and this is a perfect opportunity. The city gets first right. You don't have to purchase it. You get first right to the property. How can you help us make this little piece of paradise stay? Did I miss anything?
Okay, ma'am, you can come up to the mic and go ahead and state your name as well.
Yeah, I'm Shalane Wright, and I sent the email. And so one of our gardeners, he's actually our master gardener, he's been in contact with Daryl Davis at the Utah State Tax Commission, I believe, and he's a program manager for surplus land. And I have his contact information if you want that. But he said that he will be notifying you before the auction and he believes it will be in November. So I think that's, okay, just work through him.
I need your address.
Yeah. Email?
No, I need your address.
Oh, okay. 2842. Okay. I'm sorry, 2842 Skyview Drive.
Okay, thank you. And if, Mr. Jensen, do you have his number? I mean, I can have her give it to you later for the UDOT or the state. Yeah, if you want to share it with Mr. Jensen, that'll be fine.
Yeah, we know Daryl and all of the
Yeah.
folks involved in the disposition at UDOT, so we'll be happy to reach out to them and inquire what possibilities there may be based on direction from the council.
Okay, all right.
Sorry.
Okay.
I've done this for 20 years. So also, I was only able to send some pictures. We've got a lot, and I spoke with Tyson earlier this week, and he said if we wanted to, and at some point, if it's necessary to be put on the agenda for a city council meeting at a later date, I can bring a PowerPoint of all those pictures, or I can put them in an extra or a zip file, whatever you would like. We've got quite a few.
Okay.
So,
okay, that's fine. Typically, there isn't a lot of discussion back and forth at this time.
okay.
However,
right.
I can see that there are some responses here from the council.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and entertain that.
I was just going to.
Is there any questions that you have for?
The email that was sent out did not reach myself nor council member Smith Edmondson. So we just checked that the emails weren't correct. So if you didn't hear back from the two of us, it's because we didn't receive it. So it's
Okay.
been forwarded to us.
I was just going to say, Joy, could you forward it?
It's done.
Okay,
Already did it.
wonderful. Okay, I'm sorry, we sent it to what we were provided, and maybe sometimes in the writing of it, a letter didn't look, it
That's
was
fine.
handwritten emails, so my apologies.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. And I'm only going to make one quick statement. Typically, I don't, but you guys have done a good job with that piece of ground for quite a while. And typically, these type of community gardens don't last. So the fact that you have this long is, I'll just say congratulations on that as well.
Thank you. And I think that that's really something to highlight for you is that in the past, when people have suggested a community garden, the feedback that has been given and the concern that they had with us 8 years ago is that they've turned into weed patches. Once you see the 8-year progress, you will see it is far from a weed patch. We have now invested in a fence to keep the deer out, all paid for just by those who contribute and benefit from the community garden. We have put in fruit trees, and so it now produces peaches, pears, apples. There's a raspberry patch that has grown over the 8 years. We put in beans, green beans, tomatoes, green peppers, basically a salsa garden, everything for, and we do it all. We started out with our own individual places and realized that didn't work because certain things grow better in different parts of the garden. And so now it is truly a community garden. We all come and we meet once a month to weed, and as needed when we have time, but we try to get together. And it's become a gathering place. We celebrated a 97th birthday there for one of the men that lives on the street. And it's a place that we get together to weed and it is not just the people on our street any longer. It's people in the Oak Forest area. Okay. And we feed a lot of people with the surplus produce.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate that. Okay, we are still under the citizen comments. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on a topic that's not on the agenda? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on then to our consent items. And the consent items, we typically handle these in one single motion, although they are presented separately. And once again, I'm going to exercise our ability to shuffle the agenda. So item number C, which is to amend the water rate and other fees listed in Title III, we're actually going to I'm going to take item number C and wait and deal with it after we deal with our public hearing, since some of that does kind of pertain to that. So in the meantime, then we'll just proceed with items A and B. But to start off with, we'll have Mr. Steve Jackson present item number A, which is a cooperative agreement between Layton City and the UDOT.
Thank you. It's good to be here again. So before you, council, is the cooperative agreement between Layton City, UDOT, and Rocky Mountain Power, Resolution 22-37, located at approximately 2200 West and 1000 South as part of the West Davis Corridor project. UDOT is relocating 2200 West and 1000 South and making this road that's labeled as connector here. It's adjacent to a subdivision that's under construction. And as part of the project, power facilities are being relocated in this area. One of the requirements that we have is that all new developments bury the power lines along their frontages. As we got in discussions with Rocky Mountain Power and UDOT, we found that this was kind of a gray area as to who needed to bury this power. So Layton City reached out and collaboratively worked with UDOT and Rocky Mountain Power to come to a resolution that all three entities would participate in taking care of this need that is here to have that power buried. The developer is required to develop or to bury the power along the remainder of the frontages in this area. And so this agreement essentially would allow us to partner with UDOT, Rocky Mountain Power. The city would pay a third, the Rocky Mountain Power would pay a third, and UDOT would pay the other third in order to have this buried. Essentially, the city is paying UDOT because UDOT will pay Rocky Mountain Power, and then we'll just cover that cost, almost like a betterment. So staff recommends the council adopt Resolution 2237, adopting and approving the cooperative agreement between Layton City, Utah Department of Transportation, and Rocky Mountain Power for the relocation to underground of power facilities along 2200 West and 1000 South as part of the West Davis Highway Project, project number SR 199, and authorize the city manager to sign the necessary documents. Are there any questions I can answer?
Steve, thanks for all your work. As part of the packet that we got today, we got some emails. And I just wanted to say thank you to your team for being firm but fair as you're talking with these other entities, because these are taxpayer funds that are paying for these things, and I just appreciate the willingness the staff has to make sure that the interests of the citizens and the taxpayers are being respected. So tell your group thanks for that, because it definitely came through the email correspondence.
Thank you.
And I think this is a great example of how you can have different entities come together for the betterment of the citizens. So again, thank you, Rocky Mountain Power, as well as UDOT on this. Okay. Anyone else wish to comment? Okay, we'll go ahead and go on to item number B then, which Mr. Chad Wilkinson will present this item. It's an annexation request.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Before you tonight is a request for acceptance and certification of an annexation petition. Just to clarify, tonight you won't be deciding on the annexation. This is a step that just simply starts the process. The property is shown here on this exhibit. This is their annexation plat map. Just to give you an idea of where that property is located, over to your left on your screen is 3200 West, Gentile to the top. This is about 15 acres and some change. There's a portion of the property that's already within the city. So this would be the area that would be considered. Tonight, your action would be to simply accept the annexation petition and the certification that's been done by our city recorder. And that would then initiate the process for staff to begin the multi-week noticing process that we have to go through, where notices will be sent out to the surrounding property owners, and a notice will be provided in the ways that we normally do. So with that, we are recommending approval of resolutions 2235 and 2236, accepting and certifying the annexation petition. Be happy to answer any questions if I can.
Council have any questions? Okay,
thank
pretty
you.
Simple, straightforward. Thank you. Okay, well, with that then, Council, I'll bring it back to you to go ahead and take action regarding items A and B on our consent items. So if someone would like to make that motion.
I move that we accept the consent items, A, Resolution 22-37, and B, the annexation request, Resolutions 2235 and 2236.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second that we accept the consent items as presented. I'm going to tee up Councilmember Thomas to be ready to vote. In the meantime, I'm going to proceed. So I'll start down here with Bettina.
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Zach? Aye. And Tyson?
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Dave, are you on the line?
Aye. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you very much. That was great.
You bet. Thank you.
Okay. Now we'll go ahead, and like I mentioned earlier, so item number C, we'll move that to the bottom of our agenda item. And so this now brings us to item 6, which is our public hearing tonight. We have 3 items here. We'll start out with the first one, with which is an amendment to adopt our 2019, our 2020 Community Development Block Grant, and Mr. Morgan Cloward's going to present that for us.
Evening, Mayor and Council. Just have a brief proposed amendment to our Community Development Block Grant 2019-2020 Annual Action Plan. There's been a request to add the Layton Victim Services activity to that plan and to provide an amount of $40,000 in funding support to support that activity. The Layton Victim Services is a program that's been part of Layton City's Attorney's Office for over 2 decades. It provides assistance to low and moderate income crime victims in Layton City. And this allotment is especially going to be dedicated to those who have been victimized by COVID-19 and the negative effects of that to households. And this activity will also help victims navigate through the criminal justice system, safety planning, filing for protective orders, stalking injunctions, requesting restitution, assisting with emergency expenses, and to prevent homelessness. And if this is acceptable, we would, staff is recommending that Resolution 2238 is adopted, amending the Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan for program year 2019-2020. The reason why it's the 2019 program year is that's the year that HUD granted Layton City those extra HUD funds for these types of purposes. Are there any questions on that?
Okay. Any questions? Okay, seeing that there's no question, I need a motion to open up our public hearing.
Make a motion, we open public hearing.
Okay, it's been moved in second. So this is now the time when we will take comments from our public regarding item number A here on the agenda, which is our community block grant, or otherwise known as CDBG funding. And we're amending the 2019 and 2020 budget. So, okay, seeing that there's no comments, I'm going to go ahead and close this public hearing on item A and have the council vote on it. So once again, Mr. Thomas, I'm going to tee you up so you can be able to vote. So, council?
Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we accept Resolution 22-38. Oh,
Close.
Make a motion, we close the public hearing and adopt Resolution 22-38.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second that we close the public hearing on this particular item. So I will go ahead and take a roll call vote on this, and I'll start out with Councilmember Roberts,
Aye.
Councilmember Bloxham,
Yes.
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Councilmember Smith Edmonton. Aye. And Councilmember Thomas.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. I never can get your name. That's okay. I'll never get through that. Okay, all right, thank you. We'll now go on to item number B, which we're going to amend the budget for the fiscal year of 21-22, or Ordinance 22-08. And Mr. Tracy Probert's going to explain this one to us.
Mayor, members of the council, as mentioned, Ordinance 22-08 to amend the city budget for the current fiscal year 2021-2022. Just some brief highlights in that budget. In the general fund, it's proposed to amend the budget by just over $6.5 million. A little over $5 million of that amount comes from grant funding. So it's not use of city sources, but from outside sources, most of which came from the American Rescue Plan Act, federal government. Also, the use of $1.27 million of fund balance, and the main reasons for that is the purchase of a fire engine, consolidated dispatch server, which was just over $500,000, recognized money in an EMPG, which is Emergency Management Grant, to increase our public defender's account, which we're required to pay by rules of the district court, and to purchase a piece of park property or property that was available to enhance the trail system. Those are the main items in the general fund. In the roads fund, there's funding for improvement along King Street. Davis Metro, this was for recognition of grant revenues. And I will mention with this item that as you, if you're so inclined to adopt this ordinance, that there is a modification, and the modification of $17,500 for Davis Metro would be mentioned as part of that adoption. The dispatch center, recognition of funds collected by Davis County that are then distributed to the city. Addition to Proposition 1 funds for work along Antelope Drive for a median place there. Down payment assistance recognition in the CDBG fund of $43,500. That's for repayment of down payment assistance, and so then we get to add that back into our program. In the Capital Projects Fund, recognition of the American Rescue Plan Act project funding for the 2200 West Railroad Crossing, the fire engine that I mentioned, and the dispatch server that I mentioned. In Emergency Medical Fund, there's additional funding for wages and overtime, medical engine equipment, and an ambulance. And the wages and overtime is, just for a brief explanation of that, there's generally crossover of personnel between people that are coded to the fire department or the fire fund division within the general fund, and those that are coded for payroll purposes in the EMS fund. So when there's crossover, there was a bit of an imbalance this year in personnel, and so those funds rebalance that wage and benefit expense in the EMS fund. Hopefully that made some kind of sense. But in the water fund, $270,000 for the Holmes Creek Outlet Pipe Project. Stormwater fund, that amount of the budget was to reimburse some stormwater impact fees that were paid because the project was able to detain all of their stormwater on the actual project rather than use our system. And in the street lighting fund, an increase on the Hillfield Road Betterment Project expenses. The lighting, as we know, everything has went up, and the cost of that lighting went up on that project. That's a summary of the amendments to the 2022 budget. I don't know if you have any questions.
Any questions, council?
If there aren't any questions, I would recommend the council adopt Ordinance 22-08, amending the budget for fiscal year 21-22 with the modification of $17,500 in the Davis Metro Fund.
Okay. Okay, once again, I'm going to ask for a motion on this as well as close this particular public hearing on this year. And the reason why I'm doing these individually is because each one of these is a different year. And I think
Mayor,
that's-
actually, this is a public hearing, so we need to open one. And
Oh, excuse me,
I'm
yes.
sorry, I should
haven't even done
have
that yet.
mentioned that at the first. I apologize.
Thank you for your correction. You're absolutely right. So we need to open our public hearing so we can hear if anyone would like to make a comment, and then we can go to a close.
I move that we open the public hearing to amend the budget for fiscal year 2021-2022. This is for Ordinance 22-08.
Michelle Smith, oh, sorry.
So, yeah, okay, so it's moved by.
Can we
and
ask a
seconded.
question?
Okay,
The public?
just a minute, just
Sorry.
a minute. Okay, so it's been moved in second that we open our public hearing regarding item number B on our public hearing, which is specifically just for this year. So if you have a comment regarding the amendments that we're making to our budget, our fiscal year of 2021-22, then you're welcome to comment.
I do.
And once
Michelle
again, you
Smith.
have to state your name and address.
Michelle Smith, 2708 Skyview Drive. You mentioned a median on Antelope Drive. Can you clarify where that median will be on Antelope Drive, please?
And that was by Chick-fil-A.
It's right by Chick-fil-A, and
Yeah, it's by Chick-fil-A so that people can avoid doing a left-hand turn into that. There's too much congestion there with crosswalk and everything.
And I believe that medium's already in. We had to take action fairly quick, so. Thank you. Okay, anyone else wish to comment on this particular item? If not, then I'll call for a closure of this particular public meeting and take action regarding Ordinance 22-08.
I'll do that. Madam Mayor, I move that we close the public hearing and that we adopt Ordinance 22-08, amending the budget for fiscal year 2021 and 2022 as indicated.
Okay, once again, I'm going to tee up Councilmember Thomas. In the meantime, I'm going to start with.
You need to add the modification, correct?
Oh, yes, modification of 17.
And the modification of, what was it?
That's
17,005.
for the Davis Metro.
Okay, 17, with the modification for 17,500 for Davis Metro.
Good.
Second.
Okay, thank you very much. It's been moved in second. Okay, now I'll call for my roll call vote. Let's start out with Councilmember Morris.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith Edmondson.
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas, are you on?
Aye.
Yay. Okay, Councilman Bloxham
Yes.
and Councilman Roberts.
Aye.
Okay, there you have it. It's unanimous. We will now go on to item number C of our public hearing. And once again, Mr. Probert's going to present that item. It's regarding the adoption of our budget for the 2022-2023.
Yes, Mayor, members of the council, we have Ordinance 22-7 to adopt the budget, property tax rate, and compensation schedule for elective, statutory, and appointed officials for the fiscal year 2022-2023. The property tax rate that's proposed to be adopted is equivalent to the certified tax rate, which means that we won't go through truth and taxation, and there's not a property tax increase being proposed by the city council this year. It will be noted that the property tax rate, actually, because values increased significantly, like we're all aware of, the rate itself went down 20%. So that's, I don't know, that's pretty significant, right? But just to go through a couple of highlights in the budget, we did hold a public hearing and on June 2nd, continued it till today. This budget proposes the general fund budget of just over $51 million, a total citywide budget, which includes all the utilities, of just over $136 million. Cost of living and merit adjustments for employees based on market survey groups, $2.8 million in capital equipment, $32.6 million in capital projects across all areas, water, sewer, storm, streets, parks, and dispatch. The budget proposes a 15% increase in water base rates, with the lower tiers also being a 15% increase and upper tiers a 20% increase, and I'll go into that detail here momentarily. Some of the major projects that are included in the 32.6 million, 2,700 west from Gentile to Hillfield, and it's important to note that there's a significant amount of outside funding coming to help with that project. That's not just all citizens of Layton that are covering that. Ellison and Commons Park shop facilities, making significant headway on those projects. Gordon Avenue's secondary water trunk line, which will allow us to bring more secondary water to the west side of the city and also utilize our resources out of Andy Adams Reservoir, which are not being fully utilized at this time. And then the building of a public safety dispatch and records building, which is being built almost 90 to 95% with grant funding as well. Those are the main highlights. As we look at the proposed water rate increase, the city adopted a water master plan and rate study in 2017. There were two significant rate increases related to that around that time frame, 2018, 2019. The pandemic interrupted that plan in 2020. The council wisely decided to forego an increase, and that was mostly data-driven, as we spoke about earlier as well. At that time, we had seen our revenues grow and be in line with the model. And so it wasn't simply the pandemic, but it felt like the right thing to do along with the data, because the data indicated that we were in line and that we were headed the right direction. And so it was a decision that was made at that time to forego the third increase. That really has not a lot to do with tonight, but it is just historical information. What we're looking at tonight, at this point in time, is mostly the cost to deliver water. The water itself is not that expensive, but it is expensive, but it's not the main cost. The cost is the delivery system, the projects, the people, the pipes, the chlorinating and the fluoridation and all the things that go into providing a system that, as I put on this slide, a top-rated Class A system, which means that it's dependable, it's clean water, usable, it's rated by the state water quality people as a top-rated system. And we want to maintain that. We don't want to have a system that, falls below that level and is mostly not reliable. So in order to have that delivery system, one thing that's affected it greatly is inflation. So we're all aware that that's going on, but the big one that we're facing right now is our capital projects going up, between 20 and 30% over what some of the original estimates were. We also have compensation for employees to maintain and operate the system, and the cost of all the different supplies and materials that we need that go into that operation as well. So mostly what I'm here to say is that cost is the driver for the rate increases, really not much else. It's just the fact that we need a system and it needs to operate. And if our public works director was here tonight, he would say, if you don't have a great water system, you don't have a city. So I always like to quote him on that because it comes across good when it comes from him. But so as I talked about the 15% increase, we can look at the base rates, and this says up to 3/4 inch meters. So this first base rate represents, I would say, 95% of the residential users in the city, single family homes. They all fall in this category. Most do not have a 1 inch or greater meter. So the base rate increases for 1 inch meter and higher are all related to commercial and industrial type entities for the most part. I know we have a couple of homes that have maybe a 1 inch meter, maybe a 1.5. So that base rate for most of our residents is said to go up $3.10 with the 15% increase. For residential with secondary water, the first tier, 7,000 to 14,000, will increase 15%, and the second tier, anything above 15,000 gallons, will increase 20%, is what's proposed. For those without access to secondary water, the first two tiers, up to 45,000 gallons, will increase 15%, and the two tiers above that will increase 20%, according to the proposal. For commercial, churches, and schools, it's proposed to increase 15%. So where does that put us base rate wise and excess charges for 10,000 gallons? So in order to make things comparable across all of these different entities, we had to look at 10,000 gallons. And the main point of showing the council and citizens this is that even with these proposed increases, we still end up near the bottom of what people are charging for 10,000 gallons of water. Now, we don't establish our rates based on what everybody else is doing. We establish our rates based on what we need in order to operate a system. But I think this is good information because we hear a lot, we're the most expensive place around, and the reality is we're not. We're the cheapest. And if we don't implement the increase, we will be the cheapest. So, so what does that do to a citizen's monthly minimum bill? The $3.10 that I mentioned would take their monthly minimum bill from $75.50 to $78.60. There's not a proposal to increase the refuse rates in this current budget year. With that, I don't know if there are any questions related to the budget or water rate increase.
Okay, council, this is your chance to ask questions and we can, or discussion before we open. The public hearing is already open because we left it open from the last meeting. However, this is your chance to kind of ask questions as well. Okay, if you have no questions then, certainly I'd entertain anyone who would wish to come up to the mic and speak regarding this item. You're welcome to. Like I said, this is a public hearing and we're willing to hear from you. Okay. Seeing that there's no public comment at this time, then council, I'll bring it back to you to close the public hearing and take action regarding Ordinance 22-07.
I move that we close the public hearing and adopt the Ordinance 22-07 on the budget, property tax rate, and compensation schedule for appointed officers for fiscal year 2022 to 2023.
Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved in second that we adopt Ordinance 22-07, which is our budget for the fiscal year of 22-23. And once again, I'll do a roll call vote. So Mr. Thomas, if you can get yourself ready, I'd appreciate that. I'll start out now with Councilmember Bloxham.
Yes.
Councilmember Morris.
Before I vote, just want to give a shout out to the staff. This isn't easy. Well, first of all, delivering services isn't easy. And I appreciate the careful planning and the budgeting, this process that has been started back in December of the previous year. Just thank you for what you do and keeping the books and making sure that the tax money that is collected is used properly, and I believe it is. And so I just a thank you to everyone who's department heads, all down to everyone included. Just appreciate all of that, and I vote aye.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. 1, 2, Mr. Roberts.
Aye.
Smith Edmondson. Aye. Okay, Councilmember Thomas.
If you could see all the water around me, you'd say no, but all the water that isn't down in Utah, I say aye.
Okay, just for the record, that was an aye. Councilmember Thomas, in order to even get cell service, is sitting out in a boat up in Canada in order to attend this meeting. So thank you very much for those efforts.
No problem. Fishing's good too.
Okay, that brings our public hearing items to a close. However, we do need to go back and deal with item number C on our consent items, which is to amend the water rate and other fees listed in Title III. And Mr. Probert, you're up again.
Thought I was done.
Well, thank goodness I remembered this time.
Yeah. So tonight we have Ordinance 22-09. As we just discussed, the culinary water rates, so I won't review those again. Those are a major change in the consolidated fee schedule. In addition to that, the cost for water meters, which is charged to developers as they develop different areas and install different size meters, those costs have gone up, and so those different fees have changed. I won't go through each one of them, but they will be in the consolidated fee schedule. Also, at this time, due to the agreement with Case Creek and now what we would call Layton City irrigation water, the fees for secondary water service needed to be added to our consolidated fee schedule. And the most prevalent of those is for a secondary water user or a secondary shareholder with up to 1/3 of an acre or 1/3 share. The charge would be $20.83 per month, which is equivalent to what they would be used to seeing of $250 a year with some rounding. But that's the main fee that's applied in there. And there was also an increase in street lighting fixtures and installation that are charged to developers as we put the city authorized street lights into new developments and into old developments. Those are the changes proposed with Ordinance 22-09. Are there any questions?
So maybe just for a point of clarification for our residents, those that have been on Case Creek has basically paid that bill once a year. So what you're saying now is that smaller amount will be on their monthly billing?
Correct. So the way the city is accustomed to billing things and the way our system works is on a monthly basis. And so we had to divide that annual fee into a monthly fee, and it will show up on their monthly standard utility bill with water and sewer and stormwater and so forth.
Okay. All right. Council, do you have any questions on this or any of these?
Okay. I guess since we're in the meeting and we're talking about that, we are fairly confident, we'll give you 98% assurance that it will be on the next bill, not the one that they're probably receiving any time now, but the next one for June. It's June 30th and they'll get it middle of July. The first charge for that will be on there.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay. So council.
Sorry, May, that brings up a question. Does that, so they've paid the annual fee previously, will that be prorated? So those, do you understand my question?
We decided not to prorate it. So typically they would have paid that in April.
Okay.
The whole 250, and we've had some technology delays getting that rate into our system. We were hopeful to have it in at the end of May so that we basically only missed a month.
Okay.
But either way, it'll make up 12 months, starting in June and going till May. That will be their $250 basically. So
that makes sense.
Yeah. Is that what you're asking? Okay.
Okay. If there's no more questions, then I'll go ahead and entertain a motion regarding item number C on our consent item.
Madam Mayor, I move that we adopt Ordinance 22-09 to amend the water rates and other fees listed in Title 3 of Layton City's consolidated fee schedule.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second? Second. It's been moved in second. This is a consent item, so I can actually do a yay or nay, correct? Okay, so all those in favor of adopting item number C, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, that's an aye by council member and no nays. So there you have it. That passes unanimously. And once again, that now concludes our city council meeting for June 16th. So I'll look for a motion to close this meeting.
I move that we close the public meeting.
I think Councilmember Thomas, are you seconding that one?
You better believe it. I second it.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thank you everyone for attending this council meeting tonight.